2025, it feels a lot like smoking in 2025. Like, it looked so much cooler in old movies. Basically, nobody young is getting into it now. Like, why would you? And we've learned from Dateline, statistically, it's likely to kill you. And yet, here we are. Here we are, out here doing it.
Welcome back to Choose the Bear, where we believe that all a woman needs is herself. And we celebrate the powerful women making history right now. Today's guest is the brilliant Amma Marfo. She's a comedian, a writer, a speaker. She's such a creative powerhouse that I didn't even realize how incredible she was until I was researching her, and I kept finding her everywhere. You may know her from her books, Cultivating Creativity or Light It Up, or maybe from her incredibly funny and thought-provoking comedy. She's done so many things. You've seen her, you know her. And today she is here to talk all about her life and work, and especially her new special, Fidget Spinster, which it's so funny. It's so funny. And we're talking about really what I think a lot of her comedy and work is about, which is the radical joy of living life on your own terms. So trust me, this is a conversation you're going to love. Let's get to it. Everyone, hello. I hope you're ready for a little fun, which we all need, because we have a guest on today who is so funny and so smart, and who someone I know who is very, very funny and smart was like, you got to talk to Amma. You have to have her on the podcast. And so I am thrilled. So we have the absolutely wonderful Amma Marfo. Hello.
Hi, Kat. I am so excited to do this. This is going to be fun. Thanks for having me.
Great. Before we start, and I'm very excited to dive in, but I like to let guests tell people who they are on their own terms. So who are you? What do you do?
Who am I? What do I do? Oh, gosh, that's a lot of things. So my name is Amma Marfo. Today I am primarily a comedian. I do lots of other things, wear lots of other hats besides this very silly one that I just got. It says Beautiful Short Loser for those listening in an audio format. But yeah, I'm here today to talk a little bit about comedy. And I also am a writer, speaker, facilitator, occasional adjunct professor. Just a lot of talking and a lot of words. Those are my jobs. My jobs are words.
So I just watched Fidget Spinster, and it was hilarious. I made the bad decision of being like, I could watch this while I work, and I got no work done because it was so funny. So yeah, tell everyone sort of just what your sort of comedy special is about before I dive in with questions.
Yeah, so I have an hour of comedy that is called Fidget Spinster, and it is about the intersection of being single by choice, single long term, also as being a person who identifies as having anxiety, how those things intersect, what I'm spending my life on instead, and just the nature of what life looks like for those who have chosen to be single. And we don't really have a whole lot of jokes about that. I feel like a lot of comedians go more the route of like, everyone's dating. And I'm like, some of us aren't. And these are jokes for those folks.
No, and it's one of the first things I thought was we don't have enough single comedy and single female comedy. And when we do, it's often divorce comedy. Like, no disrespect to Ali Wong, right? But like, it's always, I just got divorced, so we're going to talk about that. So it's really all still wrapped up in relationships. And it's often also, I just got divorced. And so now I'm going to tell you all of my dating stories as well. Which, yeah, again, for a lot of people, it's like, it's not relevant. But there's no like, I'm just a woman out here being a woman.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that it's a lot of like talking about singlehood, but like it has to have worked for you before, right? Or isn't dating crazy? I've never participated in this before. Whereas those of us who are kind of in it, and especially those that have been in it and opted out, and it's like, yeah, we know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's interesting because when I think about some of the most insightful comedy on singlehood, it's sometimes it's from men. Like there's this one joke that I think about all of the time. And I don't know, I cannot think of who it is. I will try to Google it. By the way, the link to the YouTube for Fidget Spinster is in the show notes. And he said, it's just this joke about how, men always talk about their crazy ex-girlfriends and women never talk about their crazy ex-boyfriends because they will kill them, like because they're actually dangerous. And I love that joke, A, because it's true, but also because I remember when I heard it thinking, this is actually the first time I've heard a comedian like make a joke like that. Like there's not a lot about like reality. And so with you, and particularly because you use the word spinster and like really reclaim that. And then it's just like, so you're immediately like, oh, I'm walking into something that's really different.
Yeah. And I said to many friends before I did the show, just like leading up to it, I was like, I'm deeply worried that the name is going to be the funniest thing about it. Thus far, that has not been the case. But yeah, the idea of kind of coming forth with Spinster and the idea that it's a very different experience, I think was important to me. A, because I like a good name for a thing, but also B, it is comedy from a single perspective that you more than likely have not heard before.
Yeah, it was. With an inconvenient truth-like PowerPoint presentation, which I appreciate.
Yes. And it was something that my regular stand-up or stand-up outside of the context of this, I hadn't done a whole lot with. But as I started to put together the concepts for this, there were pieces of it that the visuals really helped. There were pieces of it that made more sense if you could see it. And you'll see there's some interplay, like in the back third of it, where there's a point where I say, like, there's a situation of like how men perceive this thing. And I just put up 2 pictures with statistics and I was like, take all the time you need. I can't make that joke any better than how it's already been put. And trying to rephrase it just didn't have the same hit. People really needed to see it. So there's a pair of headlines that I will not ruin for you, but, rephrasing those headlines did not have the power of just having someone look at it, get the joke, and laugh on their own did.
Yeah. Yes, no spoilers, but worth it. But how has the response to this show been as you've been taking it around?
So the folks that I've talked to that have seen it, whether they came to the original run in Boston Fringe, which is similar to the Edinburgh Fringe, if you've heard of it, but takes place in the city of Boston, a lot of folks were just relatable, or I had not heard jokes about this before, or these are jokes about singlehood that apply to me. And again, I just think there's this category of audience member who is experiencing singlehood in a very different way that folks aren't really joking about. So I was pleased that it wasn't just me. I think that's one of the most rewarding things about comedy, is to hear a joke and say, like, I've never heard it voiced that way before. I feel that way too. Thank you for saying that. So it was really, really nice to kind of have spent months in this thing, like 6 months writing it, and then having it out in the world and people being like, yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's proof. I mean, one of the things that I'm constantly on about is that, we're in this moment when more and more people around the world are choosing not to marry, not to have children. It's, all the numbers are, people panicking about it, right? But like all of the stats are showing that. And yet, if you look at our culture, like there are still no shows that are just like, here's a single woman out here doing her life, not looking for a relationship, right? Not trying to have children. Well, like that it always has to be the thing. We haven't broken out of the Sex and the City model, I think Girlfriends got the closest because even though there was a lot of relationship, there was still a lot about them and their careers and whatever. But in this moment, I'm still looking and I'm just like, when are we getting movies that are just, there are a trillion stories that you could write just about women being people in the world, but it's always, always, always relationship focused. But and I think you're getting the response that I got just seeing your thing. I was like, we need more of this. This is a huge percentage of adults in this world, not even just this country, everywhere. Where are these stories? Why aren't we getting them? It's insane to me.
Yeah, and it is one of those things that I don't think I went into it meaning to be deliberately subversive, but I was like, this is one story that I suspect applies to several more people than it might initially seem like it. And I even talk about those numbers in the beginning, like the number of folks who genuinely have just said, like, I'm not doing this. Talk to us about anything else. And I share quotes from other folks that are in those same boats. I talk to other people. I'm like, is this your reality? Talk to me about why, what it would take for you to get back out into the world of dating. And they gave lovely answers, emotional answers, insightful answers. And one person was very pointed and just said, like, you could talk to me about anything else. Like having those conversations with relatives or with friends that are already in relationships, like, oh, who are you seeing? What happened to that guy? And all of those things. And it's like, there's other things about me that I would love to talk about, and you just never get the opportunities for conversation. And yeah, being on a lineup of comedians is not unlike that. So being able to go in and be like, this person talked about being on the apps, not me. It's been really refreshing to kind of test bits of it out by going into a space where those conversations are already happening and saying, actually, I'm not. And then having folks say like, yeah, that resonated with me.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think it's a reflection of what's happening in our real lives, because I very rarely, when I am talking to my friends, I'm talking about men. I'm luckily that most of my friends are single. Very few are actively dating. Right now I do have a friend whose horrible ex-boyfriend is about to go to prison. So we're thrilled about that. We talk about that all the time. We read all of the court documents, but otherwise,
amazing.
I have whole nights with friends and men never come up.
Just whole lives passing the Bechdel test, and you would never know it.
You would never know it. Like, my life is a Bechdel test, right? And yeah, and I'm like, and I know, well, and this is part of the problem with Hollywood right now, because I know really brilliant women writers, and they're not hiring writers right now. But I know so many women who could write these stories and these conversations because they're writers, and I have these conversations with them, but they can't get in the room. Or when they do get in the room, they're so like retro Mad Men sexist still that like my friends tell me stories and I'm like, that cannot have happened. Did you get in a time machine? Like, how did this still happen?
It would really surprise a lot of people just how narrow the view for what a successful thing looks like. And that thing can be a play, that thing can be a book, that thing can be a movie, that thing can be TV, whatever it is, just the idea of what they believe will be successful. And you have to have someone has to take that first chance, and then it has to hit for someone else to then be like, oh, well, it's less risky to take that shot. And yeah, I do think that compulsory amatonormativity, or the idea that everybody is in relationships or looking for one and that they are incomplete if they haven't found one. We haven't had that thing break through to give other people the opportunity to have a wider conversation about that. And again, I talk about the numbers at the beginning, like fully 50% of folks as of like Pew Research, Match Research, are just like, nope, not for me. Do y'all not like money? Because it is there and people will pay for it. Right. So, and again, it's like anything where, and I hesitate to use marginalized in this, although there is a case for that and we can talk about it more. But the idea of anything that deviates from that standard, the fact that folks are just like, there can't be money in it until someone proves that there is money in it. And they're like, well, we want some of that money too. We've been here.
It's true. And I mean, look, we've been having this conversation forever about, do you guys not like money? Make more Black movies, right? When you do, Wakanda could have built a second Wakanda with how much money they made off of the Black Panther movies, right? Like
exactly.
They didn't want to make female superhero movies, and then they made Wonder Woman, and I saw it in the theater at least 4 times. I was a big part of the financial success of that movie. Now the second one was horrible. In the lesson, women won't watch movies. It's that women won't watch bad movies, even with Chris Pine. In fact, the only reason I watched it is because Chris Pine.
Chris Pine and Pedro Pascal. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go, and then I was like, oh, I wish this didn't exist.
Well, now
yes.
I forgot Pedro was in it. It's so funny because I realize how long it's been since I've seen Game of Thrones when you put up the picture of Pedro Pascal and Fidget Spinster.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I Googled it. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, he was in Game of Thrones. So quickly to catch folks up, if this is a draw for you, there is a conversation about Pedro Pascal as it pertains to the conversation about wanting men that you can trust and that feel honest. Yes. And that he is compared to another individual who represents that on a national scale, the spoiler of which I will not reveal, but it is one of the silliest things I've ever written. So something happens when you write comedy for a living, which is occasionally you will have an idea like right before you go to sleep, like in that twilight between being awake and being asleep, and you write it down or you make a recording. And I'm usually sure when I wake up that it's not going to be funny. And most of the time it isn't. It's just like, what did I mean? And then I looked at this when I woke up and was like, nope, still good. And the number of folks that had A, been waiting for Pedro Pascal to come up in it because I talk about him a lot, but also B, really surprised by that turn.
Oh, my jaw absolutely dropped.
if it ends up being like the legacy of my comedy career, I'm so happy with it. A pleasure to have done it. But essentially, yeah, it's the idea that one of the reasons that he is as popular as he is on a national and international scale, it seems to span race, to span age, to an extent to span gender, is just that folks feel like they can trust him. And that's important in relationships. And absent that, a bunch of us are just stumbling around being like, we don't feel like we can trust each other. So that is the role that he plays in this. Pedro, if you're listening, thank you for that.
This is why we choose the bear, right? So last season, I had a good friend, Ross Morales Raqueto, on, who is the co-founder of Run for Something, but he has now left and he's working on a project to fix men. I was like, good luck, buddy. But one of the things that we talk about in that episode is that there is this real divide between what men think women want and what women actually want. And that there's so many men who are really confused by why women are obsessed with Pedro Pascal and Jeff Goldblum and like Chris Evans in a sweater, because they have been taught to believe that women want, The Rock and Vin Diesel, which no woman wants that, right? And like that, and I thought it was so interesting when you brought this up, and particularly because with the spoiler, I know there's been a lot of confusion about like, what do women see in this guy? And you managed to, I think, make that point again about, no, women like him because we can trust him, right? Like I would let Pedro Pascal into my house in the middle of the night, and I wouldn't let men I'm related to in my house in the middle of the night. But
I would give him a key tomorrow.
Oh,
absolutely. Go ahead, take what you need.
Here's how you get in. Refrigerator's yours, right? First of all, because he's hot, but mostly because there are a lot of hot guys they would not do that with, but because you can trust him. Now, look, we all know 10 years from now, we may find out some stuff about Pedro. So I'm just saying, as of this recording.
Right. Also, I genuinely don't know that it's there. Like, people have dug. I don't.
He's just perfect. I think he's Keanu number 2, right? Keanu, another one.
Yeah.
Keanu could have my social security number tomorrow, right? But like, there is this confusion. And so then when people are like, oh, well, we only want to talk about women who are dating or whatever, or they're really confused about why all of us aren't. And it's like, but you're also really confused about why we like Pedro and not anyone who's ever been in the Fast and the Furious, right? And I thought you did a really good job of sort of illuminating, like, no, if we were looking, this is what we would be looking for.
Yeah, and that was ultimately kind of the goal of that, is because I remember, so last year Phoebe Robinson had done her like March Madness bracket of like hot men. I believe she calls it the March Madness of Peen, and he ended up winning, which genuinely even I didn't expect. Like, I participated with rapt attention. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go, and he did end up winning. And at least 2 people messaged me and they're like, can you explain why this is? One of them was like a mom with 2 toddlers. I'm like, how much time do you have? Because I have a lot of evidence, but like, you have a life. I also have a life, but our lives are very different. This is going to take like 20 minutes. Are you good with that? Like, I'm just going to send you a series of voice memos, some articles. Like, there's going to be some research to do on your part. And I love her. She put up with it. I allowed her to revoke consent, but she said that I could, and then I explained it to her. I had a similar conversation with a roommate years ago about why Oscar Isaac was this is a male roommate, why Oscar Isaac was a better celebrity crush than Brad Pitt. And I said, give me 15 minutes, and I'm going to need to put some YouTube videos up on the TV. He had to sit for like an hour. But he was like, I get it now. So I was like, I got what I needed out of that. Thank you for your attention.
That's good. I feel like 15, maybe it wouldn't necessarily take 15 whole minutes given certain news, but no, I get it. It's a thing that I feel we keep having to explain, just like women keep having to explain why we would choose the bear and why we don't feel safe. And I'm always just like, do you read the news? Like, how do you not get this? It seems very clear. Why do women love true crime, right? Like, maybe if you listen, you'd understand why we love it. And also, like, why we're real cautious and why we pay attention and write down notes and, like, are, like, all have a list of red flags. Like, this is a thing that seems it should be clear, and apparently isn't. And then so it's great that you're using comedy to try to sort of, slap it into as many people as possible.
Yeah, and it's been so interesting to me to have these conversations with people because I have other friends that are comedians that will try to address it in different ways. And in fact, one posted a TikTok this morning about like a fictional therapist who's teaching men like how to be friends with each other. And a lot of it involves like asking each other questions and like just the way that they lay out the skit. The young man that makes them is so funny, really smart and insightful, and got like other guy friends to be part of it with him. And just in the comments, just seeing other men like immediately push back. Like it had maybe been up 10 minutes and they're just like, oh, but it's actually women's fault that we're doing this. So I was like, yeah, and this is the thing. So like they're putting it all out there just in a way of like, this is the problem. And someone saying like, well, maybe it might be this. And you're just immediately like, nope, it's them. And it's like, all right, well.
So I will keep being single.
Exactly.
And, the other thing I thought of, so one of the things that we talk about a lot on the pod and is that one of the benefits of being single and child-free is we have a lot of time to explore new careers, to explore new options, to dive into new things. And here you are doing what I consider probably, I'm trying to think, I think it's the most terrifying thing on earth. I might think of something else, but right now, stand-up comedy, number one in my mind. And I think I'm the funniest person who ever lived. Wild horses could not drag me onto a stage for stand-up comedy. I can't think, just thinking about it, my stomach is hurting. It's horrifying to me. You have done it. You've just been like, I'm out here. I'm just going to like jump in. And you're building this awesome career out of it. How and why have you done this to yourself? And what have you learned on this journey?
So I ask myself that a lot. Very often I'm like, this is a choice. I could stop at any time. Why am I doing this? So I started almost 10 years ago on a dare, actually. So I used to do a podcast with a group of friends about just like the nature of creativity, how it was showing up in our lives. It was 3 writers and a painter. And we were doing this episode on like New Year's resolutions and goals. And unbeknownst to me, the other 3 got together at some point on a text thread that I was not on. And then they came on the show and said, we decided you're doing stand-up this year. So I was like, oh, okay. So that was in January, I want to say, of 2017. And then I took a class over the summer. I knew a lot of comedians. I had been doing comedy press at that point for a little while. So I was like steeped enough in the world as an observer, but not really participating in it. And then tried it out that summer, had a showcase that August, and then just really liked it. And I said, I'll keep doing it for as long as it's fun. And with few exceptions, it has stayed fun, so I keep doing it. And what I realized in kind of building a community around it in Boston, which is a place that is very well known for comedy, but also very well known for producing really high profile white male comics, of which I am neither, is being able to figure out what it looks like to carve out the path that you want in this. And being able to figure out like who you want to work with based on how they treat people, who you don't want to work with, or what spaces don't feel safe or comfortable. But also just like finding people who are committed to you getting better and spending time with them, building opportunities to workshop, helping each other write, supporting each other, getting folks into rooms that maybe they wouldn't otherwise be in, putting each other up for things. So really deep friendships have come from it in a way that I don't think I would have expected when I first started. And that's really kept me going with it.
I mean, that's amazing. And, it's one of the many reasons I think that it's so important for us to do these things is not only because you get to grow and learn and try new things, but that one of the things that is very real about being single is that we do need to cultivate community. And frankly, I would argue, given the married women I know, so do they. But we need to cultivate community and deep friendships. And we are living in a world where that can be more difficult, right? We're not all joining Rotary clubs and going to church every Sunday. And so we have to find those things. And it is in those activities, whatever your hobby is, whatever thing that you're diving into, where you find that community, which is so important just for us in life. And as studies are showing, one of the most important things to helping you age and age with good cognitive health. So it really is critical for us.
Well, and I think too, it's been interesting to kind of connect that journey in comedy to the decision to date or not date. Because I have been in relationships while I was doing comedy. I've been out of relationships while I was doing comedy. And I think the automatic fear that men have is like, A, this woman is funnier than me, which statistically probably I am. I know a lot of men, some are funny, but I am funnier than many others. But the other thing about it is they're very worried they're going to become material, like deeply concerned.
Oh, yeah. It's like dating Taylor Swift. You know you're going to be a song or a whole album.
Right, but I've honestly, and maybe it's just the cross-section of men that I've dated, but like it's not typically interesting enough to make material, which then becomes its own problem where it's like, why don't you tell jokes about me? I was like, well, what do you want here? But yeah, it's been so interesting because there is, and the Atlantic did an article about this, I think about 10 years ago, about kind of the intersection of why it is A, difficult for women to be funny in public spaces, but also B, very hard for them to be taken seriously as a result of it. And some of that's professional success, some of that is relationship and dating success, but the idea of being a funny woman and what that represents is seen as less admirable to men. And in some cases, even other women. So contending with that and being like, this is something I want to do, knowing that is a reality, and choosing to do it anyway, with the understanding that like the person that I end up with would probably end up either genuinely being funnier than me, cool, I welcome the opportunity, or okay with the fact that I am funnier. And that's surprisingly hard to find.
That's interesting. I mean, I feel like that just is along the lines of sort of everything when it comes to relationships. Is men don't really want you to be better at them than anything except potentially cooking. But there's so much bias in the comedy world against women, and there's been so much, where one of the guests for this season is Allison Levy, who wrote on Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah.
And that's a whole show about how women aren't supposed to be funny. Yeah. So I feel that. I also feel like this is something that you often hear from female comedians and have for all of time. So unfortunately, it is not a thing that is getting better.
Yeah, and that's just kind of been a part of, like, that's one of there are any number of truths you have to accept in the process of being a woman in the world, trying to do whatever it is you're trying to do, that some things are just going to be harder for any number of reasons. And that's one of the ones that I've kind of had to acknowledge. That it's like, if I want to do this, there are a number of people that this will close me off to. But then again, probably wasn't going to work with those folks anyway. So it is kind of a time saver in that way as well.
Yeah. That is, yeah, let the trash take itself out. There you go. So speaking of being brilliant and multifaceted and remarkable in every way, I was doing my little like interview prep and blah, blah, and then I looked up like Amma Marfo on Amazon. So I was like, maybe this person has a book I don't know about. And then I saw a couple books and I was like, that can't be the same Amma Marfo. She's so successful in so many other things. And then I looked at something else and I was like, oh my God, this woman also has written like multiple books.
Yeah, it's the same one.
Amazing. So I want to talk particularly about cultivating creativity.
Yeah.
Because I think it's relevant both to your comedy career and also to, I think, a lot of what we talk about sort of around single women. So can you tell us, though, to start, just all about the book?
Yeah. So Cultivating Creativity was born of some work that I did in, I'm going to say my prior life. It's not technically. Why that is very complicated. But suffice it to say, my prior full-time career was in higher education. So I worked a lot with students in student leadership, student organizations. So if you were ever in like a club on campus or part of student government, those types of students. And what I realized was anytime they were coming into a challenge that they encountered when they were trying to get something done, they would just stop. They just decided, nope, I'm not supposed to be doing it. And they would back up. And yeah, it was really interesting to kind of think about. It was unfortunate because I think a lot of them had really good ideas, but the first time they hit a roadblock, they're just like, oh, I think that means I'm not supposed to be doing it. So I came into creativity work as a means to kind of help them stop and rethink something. So say, all right, why didn't this idea work? What other ways could we go about it? Kind of cultivating a sense of to the name of the book, Cultivating Creativity, that would allow them to go about that goal in another way. And that ended up feeling really useful for a lot of my colleagues in higher education who were running into similar things. So essentially, it talks about these traits or these assets that you should have in order to be able to exercise creativity. So things like pulling in information from a lot of different places, having somebody that you can call on as a mentor or advisor, being a determined person. So the idea that if something is difficult, how do you keep yourself going? Staying flexible. So if something does go wrong, being the type of person that says, all right, that's okay, we're going to redirect. So it gives kind of an overview of those competencies, how folks who identify as creative are using them in their work, and how to start building those capacities for yourself.
So I love this approach because I think, there's a lot of conversation, and has been for a while, about how younger generations don't have grit, right? And like and that's really what we're talking about. If you are quitting something the second it gets hard, that is a lack of grit. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on sort of where that comes from. But I also like that you have sort of turned to creativity as an approach to solve it, because I think there's often these kids don't have any grit, but there's not really an answer to like, how do you help them, and maybe like give your infant tougher toys or something, but there's never really a solution to like, well, this is what we do about it. And it seems like you've come up with an interesting way to address that I haven't seen.
Well, yeah. And, it's funny to me because when I was looking through things like educational theory, so I have a master's degree in education, and looking at a lot of the conversations that were happening around that, education wasn't really applying a whole lot of that. So a lot of the things that I was pulling from were from areas like psychology, or places that were using it in practice more often, like business. So I think when we think about these students don't have grit and folks identify as students, there weren't a whole lot of tools within the discipline of education to solve that. Right. So I was even really upfront about like, hey, we took student development theory. I looked at it. It wasn't in there. I had to go other places to figure that out. So again, that broad-mindedness piece of, if what you need isn't where you expect to find it, where can you look? So that was really interesting to me. And then I think too, the idea of what grit are we rewarding, right? Or what resilience are we rewarding? Because I think we have students for any number of reasons who are tremendously resilient, but it's in areas that maybe we don't think count. So if they have difficult home lives, or if they are of a marginalized population that is under attack by the government, and there are a lot of those at the moment, like we don't necessarily connect that type of resilience to this person is struggling in a class, or this person is having issues making social connections. And they're like, oh, well, they're not gritty enough. They're tremendously gritty. They just need help applying that skill that they already have and putting it in a different scenario. That's what we're not really getting at. So I have a lot of complicated feelings about the idea of grit and resilience, because I'm like, no, most of them have it. It's just a matter of helping them translate it to where we see them struggling. Not everybody can do that on their own. Sometimes they need help.
Well, and this is a problem that we see a lot, and have for since the beginning of time, with first generation college students, where they so often get to college and fail, and then people say, well, they weren't good enough. And it's like, no, they were working for their jobs, and they had all these family obligations, and they are walking into rooms that they've never been in before, and hearing conversations they've never heard before, and no one ever taught them how to study, or that they could go to tutors or whatever. Like, there's all of these things, and if someone helped them with those pathways, they've got all the resilience and grit they got here, right? Like, if you get to college as a first generation college student, that should prove enough that you have what it takes to get through it. But you're now in a place with a whole different language, and it's a whole different universe.
Exactly.
And I remember when I started college, and I come from everyone in my family from multiple generations went to college and has grad degrees. I went to the same school as my mother. And so I literally had all the privilege, and all of these first gen kids would come up to me and ask me for help with things that I thought were really basic. And that was the first time I understood, oh, no, it's basic for me, because everybody I didn't know college was optional until I was in high school. And then my mother was like, it's not for you, right? But like, because everybody I knew, all of my friends' parents. And so when I got there, that was when I realized, like, oh, even something as simple as going to a banquet is really foreign and terrifying if you've never done it. But if you grew up doing it, you don't realize. And so you're right. I do think that there are some ways in which we've lost sort of when I think about grit, I sort of think about sandpaper, right? And like there
Yeah.
were things that were tough. Like when we wanted to get online, we had to sit there and listen to that beautiful sound that I miss and wait
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. And like if you wanted to download a song, it was going to take 48 hours, and there was a not zero chance that it was going to be the wrong thing,
Yep.
right?
And also, you're just like, nobody pick up the phone. I'm trying to do
Oh my
something.
god. Oh god, someone would pick up the phone and there would go your Nirvana download, and then your life was over, or you had to run in and get the radio, right? But like there was sandpaper to life that now there's not, right? Now you can just pick up your phone. And so I get why young people would think everything's supposed to be easy. It kind of is for them. And so then when you
Yeah.
get somewhere harder, like college, and like
Mhm.
there's a roadblock, they haven't encountered just daily roadblocks like we used to.
Yeah, to extend that metaphor, just like a lot of those things that were really pointy or were really dangerous were sanded down for them. So then there are pointy edges when they get into a space that folks who maybe sanded that down for them before aren't in, and they have to figure out how to navigate getting around those edges on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. And even, it's funny because I moved recently from Los Angeles to this very small, very rural town in Arizona. And in a lot of ways, it feels like the 80s, not just because there are a lot of senior citizens who drive the same car they've been driving for 50 years, but because like first graders walk home from school alone. Kids ride their bikes. It's a very safe town now. Republicans who live here, we're 20 minutes from the border, and they think we're under attack. And I'm like, dude, that's literally a first grader just moseying on home from school. We're fine. But like, it's a thing you didn't see in LA, right? Was kids just sort of, they walk home, they ride bikes, whatever. And it made me think about, when Stranger Things came out, and those of us who are a little older had to explain to younger kids, no, that's what it was like. We just took our bikes and left and eventually came home and it was fine. And I
Yeah.
remember it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your
Or your
children
kids are in an hour. Yep. Yep.
Right? But like now there's parents, don't let their kids have sleepovers and stuff. And I get why you would do that. But also it was being out there alone. I remember my brother and I being out, and like we'd encounter stuff and we just have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're just
Yeah.
out there. Nobody knows where you are. There's no phones.
Yeah, I saw.
Maybe you'll make it back to grandma's, maybe not.
Yeah, I saw a Skechers ad the other week. They have like a kid sneaker that has a slot in the sole for an AirTag, and they're advertising it under the guise of it being able to find your shoes. Sure, so yes, it can do that. Okay, and that's a means to track your kid without them knowing, which is fascinating to me. Like, I get how they feel as though they have to advertise it, but also I'm like, what is this actually going to get used for? Yeah. And like, we did not have that. Like, you were out until you were out, and then you were back.
Yep.
That's it.
And I get it. Like, I read an article about parents who are, setting up surveillance devices and cameras when their kids go to summer camp. And part of me is like, I've seen those documentaries. I would too. Like, I'm not letting, this is the problem, is documentaries have ruined life for us. Because now we're like, oh, that stuff was happening when we were kids. We just didn't know about it. So I get it. But yeah, at the same time, this was a Black Mirror episode. Remember when the little girl kidnapped as a baby, and then her mom put the camera in and could see everything she was doing? And it's like, I get that desire, but that also ruined that little girl's life. I look, another reason not to be a parent. I don't know what I would do, but also I understand how it changes the way when those kids grow up, how they encounter life and difficulties. And the fact that you then were like, all right, I'm going to use creativity as a language for helping them overcome this, I find really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been nice to see how folks respond to it and like the number of ways that it can be applied. But for me, it was kind of having students leave those sessions and say like, all right, I think I understand what I'm supposed to do here. And like, it doesn't mean that they can't ask for help. They can absolutely ask for help, but it wasn't like, I broke this, fix it. It was, this didn't go the way I thought it would, but I think I might have an idea about how to go about it another way. Or that would then evolve into, I have an idea. I know who I have to talk to be able to implement it. And then like that capacity built over time.
Mm-hmm. So what are your, because I know, one of the things that we talk about a lot and that we just sort of talked about is the beauty of being just young and wild and free, or youngish and wild and free. And
yeah, youngish, exactly.
Exactly. Is, I have friends who say like, oh, I want to start a new hobby or something, but like, I don't want to be bad at it. And as a person who fails constantly, regularly, usually in public, I'm like, whatever, I can be bad at anything. I could not humiliate myself more than I already have in moments in my life, so it's fine. But I do get, especially as you get older, and especially for folks who aren't used to trying and failing a lot, that it can be really scary to start new things. So how, and particularly because you wrote this book and then you started your comedy career, which is both a creative endeavor and also the most terrifying thing a human being could do. I would rather like fight a basilisk with my bare hands than do stand-up comedy. Like I just
Well, and that's a super common take on it. I want to affirm your feelings there, because it is not only is it like it is public speaking, which is a fear that a lot of people have, but it's also public speaking with a very specific goal. Like I teach and I facilitate and I do a lot of things where I'm up in front of people and like I write things that are meant to be spoken out loud. And comedy is the hardest version of all of those things I have ever done. And it stays hard. Like it's not like public speaking, admittedly, once you get and do enough practice with it, it gets easier. Comedy doesn't get easier. It stays hard. So I definitely understand that. I think for me, it's been a matter of like managing the expectation, right? So I'm not going to leave a whole room laughing every single time. That's not the type of comedian that I am. Not every audience is going to like or understand what it is I'm trying to do. But if I can get like even a handful of people in a room who weren't paying attention to the comedian before me, but like what I'm doing, that's all right. Or if it's not silent the whole time that I talk, that's okay. Or if somebody at that show sees me and is like, I really liked what you were doing. Do you want to do this other show? That's okay. So it's been able to kind of set it up as manageable goals. Whereas I think a lot of people will go in and be like, oh, I saw this person do it on Netflix. I saw this person do it on YouTube. They crushed. Everybody laughed. And that's what I want. That's not realistic for so many folks for so many reasons. So kind of managing what I want to get out of the experience has been really nice. I've also been lucky over time that I've been able to find more communities of comedians that do the kind of comedy that I do, whether that is comedy for women and non-binary folks, whether that is festivals specifically for Black women, all of those spaces where I'm more likely to do well. I've gotten enough exposure to be able to move into those spaces and kind of use the success that I get when I'm talking to like my people, however you choose to define that, to kind of like buffer you or serve as a buoy when you're in those rooms where maybe it doesn't work as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, and actually those are all, I think, really good tips for people trying anything new. So like what are, when you're thinking about using creativity as a mechanism for starting a new thing and being okay with being cringe at it. Like, I think that's good. That's such a huge step. I would probably talk about this ad nauseum on the podcast, but I just started golfing this summer. I love it so much. I'm horrible. I'm always going to be terrible. Everyone is bad at golf except Tiger Woods and Minji Lee. Everyone will always be bad at golf. I go knowing I'm going to embarrass myself, but I'm like, if I could just get like 2 good hits and like a couple of double bogeys, I'll be happy, right? Like I have to set those goals because otherwise I'll walk away and I'll just be humiliated and I'll throw my clubs into the pond. What are sort of like other things that you've used or written about or seen your kids use that you think are useful tips for people who want to try something new but are just like terrified that they're going to embarrass themselves and be bad at it?
I mean, a lot of life is kind of embarrassing.
Yes.
Like, I don't have to be doing anything on stage to be embarrassing. I embarrass myself all the time in front of my friends, in front of my family. Like, it happens. It happens. And I get why folks are afraid of it. I fully understand it. It's uncomfortable. You feel as though it, like, affects other people's perceptions of you. More often than not, I am at a level of comedy where if I absolutely blow a show, practically no one is going to remember. I'm not that famous. Even if it's a show that I'm headlining, which does happen. Like, sometimes I'll maybe, like, forget a joke for a second, but then I realize it's not as though you have specials out on Netflix. The only person that knows how that joke is going to go is you. You're the only person that knows. So if I can still play it off as though I'm making it work, that's fine. It's okay. And it is a hard cultivated mindset. I want to be honest about that. I am an eldest child. I am a Virgo. I am a child of immigrants. This attitude shouldn't exist in me. And yet I persist. So it's really been a lot of training. And anxiety medication were required. So don't be afraid of that either.
There you go. Well, on those words of wisdom, can you tell everyone, I know this is coming out in October. I know you've got some shows coming up, but also so people can stay posted. I also want to know all about these comedy festivals for Black women. Where can people find you, follow you, come see you live?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and YouTube at Amma Marfo. So my first, last name, all one word. My next kind of show on the road, as it were, is October 5th in New York City at QED Astoria. I'll be doing an abridged version of the show in LA during the Black Women in Comedy Festival. I believe it is October 17th to 19th. I am consulting. Actually, I'll take it off the wall for a second so you can see. I'm consulting the Pedro Pascal calendar.
No.
Yeah. So I'll show you. We're in August right now. So this is August. Month's almost over. Looking into October. So the 17th to 19th in LA. And then if you're in Austin, December 13th and 14th, I will be doing the show there. And then a smaller version of it in New York for the Black Women in Comedy Laugh Fest, end of February, beginning of March. So there is a Black Women in Comedy Festival on both coasts. This year is the first time I'm doing both of them. So the LA one is in October, and then the East Coast one is in New York the following February.
Amazing. Amma, thank you for joining. Thank you for reclaiming the word spinster. Thank you for making me laugh and not get any work done this morning. You are great.
Listen, we're all cogs in a capitalist machine. If I can burn some time for even 47 minutes, as I believe is the length of that video, I am happy to do it.
That's it for today's episode of Choose the Bear. Huge thanks to Amma Marfo for sharing her humor, wisdom, and insight into creativity, independence, and embracing the spinster life with joy. If you love this conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a reminder that everything they are is more than enough. And of course, check out Amma's new special, Fidget Spinster. Links are in the description.